Well, yes, we do have Honorable Rima Shawulu, who is the Chairman House Committee on the Army, also a member of the PDP. He joins us from Abuja. Honorable Rima, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. But let me start with you where Gawashe left off, speaking about some of those bills that were not assented to by the president. Well, he did use the word that, look, the president likes to be methodical with his assenting to some of those bills, and he doesn't want to sign any stupid bill. So, isn't that an indication of the frosty relationship between the executive and the legislature?
Well, the president in the first place has the right and the power to veto any bill he doesn't want. The reason why we have three arms of government is that the three arms theoretically check one another. The judiciary interprets the laws, the legislature makes the laws, and the executive executes the laws. And the president has the inherent power to say no, and the legislature has the right to also override the veto. However, the issue of whether the bills are properly done or not begs the question. Three things. The first place is that the legislature and the executive are not in combat. They're not fighting themselves. They're supposed to work together. And before bills come up, they go for public hearing. You have members of the executive. You have the public attending the public hearings. Number two, the president has complained that there are drafting issues, which begs the question, drafting issues. He needed to call attention to specific clauses, specific sentences, and suggest ways by which they may be corrected, but he does not do that. And so the issue of saying that they are not properly done does not really answer any question. The issue is that we're supposed to be working together.
If I could jump in, yes, you're supposed to be working together, but how do you explain if on the one hand the Senate said, look, they've signed or they passed into law the highest number of bills in the Senate's history, and then on the other hand, the executive not extended to the highest number of bills in that executive legislative history as well. So wouldn't it be fair for those who are watching to say it comes across as though politics seems to have superseded governance in this case, because that's what ultimately the people want? So would you say the National Assembly bent over backwards enough to allow or work out how the president needs to assent to some of those bills so that the people don't suffer for it?
Yeah, if you look at what happened in the now famous Electoral Act amendment, the president did suggest specific amendments to be done. At the end of the day, it was not assented to. So, because I was overhearing my good friend and colleague Garba Shehu talking about that the president needed to be methodical, that some of the things, like he was talking about the budget, that the president sends the budget or the bills to all relevant MDAs and people to make comment. Now, if you are sending a bill, if you are amending a law on an agency, and they have vested interest in the agency, you now send the bills that the National Assembly has made to the agency to comment on a proposed correction. It stands to reason whether the people who are benefiting from that thing will agree that the bills, the president should assent to those bills. So telling us that you are sending bills to people like that, what you needed to do was to have a clearinghouse. A clearinghouse that involves all sections. And what happens when the bills are done? You come and contest a position at public hearing. The position is defeated. You now go back to the president and make him to veto a bill that is meant to do correction, much more than the little issue that you have vested interest in. Well, the Constitution itself has ways of resolving those issues. Unfortunately, it is political because it has not happened. It happened in 2000 when the act establishing the Niger Delta Development Commission was set up, that the National Assembly did override the presidential veto on that. But it's politics. Whenever you mention issue of override, issues of party, issues of ethnicity, issues of identity, and the rest of them come up, people actually leave the major issues that should be contested to be considering other factors that are not relevant to the issues that are in contest. So it makes it difficult for the National Assembly to move. But having said that, the fact of the matter that the president today vetoes a bill does not mean that an idea has not been sown. It does not mean that a next president or even the current president will not have a change of mind and sign the bills at a later date. It's just for us in the National Assembly to keep on doing what is supposed to be done.
My apologies, if I may just chip in there. Do you think, for instance, there is this fear or supposition by the executive that some of these bills that are being pushed to Mr. President are selfish bills in themselves, and even if they are executive bills, the president still has the rights to not assent to them?
Yeah, in fact, some of the bills that have been assent has been declined. Actually, if I can remember, were actually executive bills, meaning that the president or the people advising him do not want any input from the National Assembly. They perhaps are looking for a rubber stamp assembly where you bring in, and you cannot. History has shown that you cannot have, even if the president himself were to become the Senate president today, I believe that he will do exactly what the current Senate president is doing, because there are conflicts of roles, conflicts of responsibilities. And what is done, if you even look at other claims like the United States, where we copied much of our 1999 Constitution from, there are sometimes that governments are shut down because of disagreements. But the legislature has more strength in the United States because they can actually request and requisition papers and documents from the president, and the president cannot say no to that. Currently, President Trump has gone to the courts, and the courts have declined. The courts have told him that he is obliged under the Constitution to submit to the legislature the request they've made to him.
So, Honorable, are you saying, you mentioned the other time that sometimes the issues raised, are politicized. Are you saying then that much of the executive, legislature, frosty relationship we've had has been more political than functional governance issues?
Yeah, but we are in a political system anyway, so you have to have that at the back of your mind, that people look at things from the political benefits they have. That is historical. That is a historical attitude, and that is a worldwide attitude. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. People are interested in what they think will help them. That is one. Number two is that there are a lot of things. For instance, the refusal to assent to the Electoral Act was purely political. It had nothing to do with the need. Now we're hearing people say, oh, it is time we can now go ahead with the Electoral Act because we don't have election now. But the Electoral Act was meant to correct the election anyway. The Electoral Act was not meant for anything outside the election. So because some people think that, okay, we have got what we want, so we can now do the Electoral Act. After all, the president is not standing election in 2023. So that is political. There's nothing you can do about that.
What are you looking forward to seeing come the inauguration of the 9th Assembly, especially with its relationship with the executive?
Well, I'm hoping that because the president is not seeking election again, even though there definitely will be hawks around him that want to succeed him, who will instigate and try to create tension. But I hope the president will rise up to become a statesman and look at things dispassionately, look at things from the perspectives of how the totality of Nigerian people, irrespective of tribe and religion, will benefit from the government that is coming into being, that is getting back to power in a few days' time.
From what I can read, you seem to be suggesting that the rift between the presidency and the legislature was because the president was going to seek re-election?
A lot of it is that, but I also want to tell you that the rift was completely unnecessary. Let me explain to you. If you look at the history of the legislature from 1999 to date, there is no precedent, including President Yaradua, President Goodluck Jonathan, and President Olusegun Obasanjo, that had such a pliant legislature that did everything that the president requested for. Go and check through the books, check through the records. There is no legislature that has given itself up to do everything that the president wanted to do. You had no, until the election approached, Speaker Dogara Yakubu, at the risk of being rejected by members, ensured that everything that the president wanted, the president got. Check the records, you see.
That is
bent backward.
In the House of Representatives.
In the House of Representatives. In the Senate, the area of conflict is the issue of Magu. But look at it dispassionately. The premium security agencies, that is the state security services, sent a report saying that Magu should not be confirmed because he had issues. What do you expect the Senate to do? To ignore the premium security agency in Nigeria?
Well, some people will say that that was convenient because it was seen that the rift between the executive and the legislature was already there even before that matter, that
I'm
issue
talking
came
about
up.
roles. You definitely have role conflict. If two of you are doing something that you have role conflict. Those ones are, when Bill Clinton came to Nigeria, he described it as creative tension. It does happen everywhere. But come to think of it, is there any bill, anything that the president, including requests for vehement, requests for loans, that the National Assembly did not give the president?
We do know that at some point appointments were stalled at the Senate, that is, and they gave their reasons. One of the issues which the executive has constantly pointed to is the issue of the budget. It doesn't seem that the legislature has the same sense of urgency as the executive does when it comes to matter of the budget.
That would be that would not be kind to the legislature. There is an existing law that requires that the budget, that has set out how budget should be done. When the MTEF, the medium term expenditure framework, should be submitted, when budget should be submitted. The president at the last budget submitted it on the last day of the legislature in 2018. And up to the last week that the budget was passed by the National Assembly, there were requests from MDS asking for changes to their budget.
You're talking about the 2018 budget?
I'm talking about the
2019 budget.
Yes, I can take you back.
Yes,
if you
the
check,
2018 budget, which they point to, has taken 7 months within the National Assembly.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't taken. It was submitted on the last legislative day of 2018.
I'm talking about the 2018 budget. This
when was it submitted?
2019.
And when did the MDS? When did the MDS stop? If you recall, the 2018 budget, the president had to call his ministers and instruct them to start appearing before committees because they were refusing.
Why were they refusing?
Well, you should ask them.
Why didn't you exercise your power of arrest?
Powers of arrest. You know, everything is contextualized. You're asking for power of arrest today. The National Assembly does not have its police. The National Assembly only has Sergeant at Arms, who is going to implement the orders.
So the powers are null and void? They don't matter?
No, they are null. Well, the law has been breached in the first place by people who are supposed to uphold the law. You say, bring this medium-term expenditure framework in September, you bring it in December. And you bring the budget the last day. So how do you expect? I was a legislative aide in the National Assembly in the fourth assembly. And I want to tell you that this has been a recurring decimal. It didn't start now.
In terms of the budget, right?
Yes, in terms of
so
budget.
So looking forward now, and this is
let me make the point. And
yes.
the earlier the people manning the executive realize that the legislature has a role, also realize that the Constitution vests the powers. There was a time that I think President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua wanted to go to court to seek interpretation of the powers of the legislature over the budget, and he withdrew the case from court because the legislature says that you submit proposals.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to wrap up what you think, what you're looking forward to seeing. I'm sorry to interrupt your thoughts like that. What you're looking forward to seeing come the Ninth Assembly and the executive.
Like I said, I do hope that the president will rise up to become a statesman and allow the systems to work. Let me tell you, the difference between systems that are working and systems that are not working, systems that are strong and those that are not strong, is that once one organization wants to interfere in the way another works, you create unnecessary tension. And those are the things that make systems not to work in most parts of Africa. If you allow the legislature to work well, who would not want to be a friend to the president?
It's a nice rhetorical question, and it's a fine place to leave it. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. Honorable Rima Shawulu is the Chairman House Committee on Army and is also a member of the People's Democratic Party.